What is the process of getting into IMT training? That is the application, shortlisting, portfolio, interview, ranking system. How does these things work?
So, application for IMT is, I would say, it's a multi-step process that spans across, a course of few months. Each year, you have about 15 to 1600 spots that open for resident doctors across UK, including IMGs. And then we apply for these, and then the whole battle starts for a long listing and then shortlisting out of those sort of 8,000 to 9,000 applicants.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Go Campus. This is Ashwini with you. So, today we have Dr. Zeeshan with us. Dr. Zeeshan has always stood out as a sincere and hardworking doctor. I've personally known Dr. Zeeshan since 2021, back from his FMGE exam days. And after completing his MBBS from Philippines, he cleared the FMGE exam in his very first attempt. And even while doing his internship in India, he proactively worked on his English proficiency test, preparation for PLAB, and began building his portfolio. Now, he truly reflects the spirit of a goal driven doctor, deeply committed to career progression. Very good news is Dr. Zeeshan recently secured an IMT training position in the UK, a major milestone indeed. Congratulations, Dr. Zeeshan, and welcome today.
Thank you, Ashwini ma'am, for such a lovely introduction. So, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Zeeshan Mohammed. I'm currently working in the NHS as a junior clinical fellow and have recently secured a spot in internal medicine training. Over the past 2.5 years, I've worked as a junior clinical fellow across various medical specialties, including acute medicine, respiratory medicine, renal medicine as well. And, as an international medical graduate, my journey into UK training has been filled with challenges, learning curves, and some really rewarding experiences. So I'm really excited to share my story with you today, from navigating from PLAB to building my portfolio and finally getting into IMT.
Thank you so much. So, we are going to start the podcast session today. So, all the questions that I'm going to ask Dr. Zeeshan now are the questions that we've been receiving from the doctors. I mean, this is what you all wanted me to ask. So, we are just starting the session now. We are trying to ask him as many questions as possible, but still, due to limited time, we may not get all the answers. But if you wish to talk to Dr. Zeeshan directly, you know where to go. Please log into www.gocampusworld.com if you wish to speak one-on-one with Dr. Zeeshan. Thank you. So we are starting with the session now. Doctor, the first question that we have from most of the doctors, what is the process of getting into IMT training? That is the application, shortlisting, portfolio, interview, ranking system. How does these things work? And what's the kind of timeline that it takes to complete these steps?
So, application for IMT is, I would say, it's a multi-step process that spans across, a course of few months. Each year, you have about 15 to 1600 spots that open for resident doctors across UK, including IMGs. And then we apply for these, and then the whole battle starts for a long listing and then shortlisting out of those sort of 8,000 to 9,000 applicants, followed by the interviewing process. So basically, it starts with an online application where you put in all your qualification details, training experience so far in the UK or any other country. But the most important aspect of this application is the self-assessment portfolio score, which is where you have a chance to score yourself based on your achievements of the portfolio. It's based on this score, and this is the most important bit. It's based on this score that you get shortlisted for an interview. And if you're shortlisted, then that's where you get to talk about your achievements, practically prove to this panel why you're a good fit for IMT training. And then once the interview score gets released or your rank gets released, you're given a rank which then determines your chances during preferencing. I would say it's very competitive, very demanding, especially for IMGs, but not impossible. So I think key is to view this as a journey of growth and not just a single event.
That's very nice. Doctor, if I have to just ask you now, let's say just to get shortlisted, can doctors score themselves high in the self scoring? So just that they get their enough points to get shortlisted for the interview?
I think there have been cases that, there have been people who have scored themselves higher just to get shortlisted. But then when it comes to the interview, you have a panel of consultants who sit in front of you who have already gone through your portfolio, that you have the evidence you've submitted, and then that interview is where they ask you questions about it. So I would highly discourage people from scoring themselves inaccurately, because in the end, when it comes to the interview, it does get cross verified, it does get cross checked, and if you're proven that you were sort of dishonest in scoring yourself, then that is a huge setback for yourself.
Thank you for that, doctor. And doctor, also I'd like to know, you said they have to upload all the qualifications evidences, right? Earlier it was offline, they had to maintain all the originals. So now it is uploading it online, is it? How does the evidence work, like maintaining the portfolio?
I think in terms of the actual IMT application, the only thing that you're actually uploading is the CREST form. So that is, and I'm sure a lot of IMGs must be aware that before you apply for IMT, you have to get this CREST form signed, which is basically either signed by a UK based consultant who is acknowledging that even though you've not done the usual foundation training FY1 and FY2 prior to trying to join IMT training, you have still accomplished, or you're at a level above the F2 and you're ready to join IMT training. So essentially, from my experience and from the IMT application that I've been going through over the past 2 years, it's just been the CREST form that you have to actually upload. The rest, even in your qualification, you do not have to upload it. You just have to provide information, and they have access to GMC where you've already provided all these information.
So how does the verification of evidence work, doctor? Let's say if I've attended a conference, I do claim certain points and I do it in my self-scoring, right? So there's no verification of the fact that whether I've attended or not attended, whether I've presented or no.
So you have to understand, attending conferences is not essentially part of the self-assessment score. So the things that are part of the assessment score is if you've done a research. So if you have a PubMed index research, that gives you approximately, I think, 8 to 6 points. If you have a case report that's not PubMed index published, you get 3 points. Then you have oral presentations or poster presentations. So the way they have sort of laid this out is, they, even though they do not ask for evidence, these are things that are easily verifiable through the interview. If you have done teaching sessions through an organization, you're essentially expected to have a certificate ready if they want you to present.
Okay, done, doctor. And doctor, what's the timeline that it takes from application stage till you start your IMT role, or let's say till you receive your selection?
So the applications open around November each year, and you get a window to work on your application about a month and then submit it. Then that's when the shortlisting happens around, I would say, January. And then if you're shortlisted, you get invited to book an interview slot that happens again over a period of month. So the whole of January and February just goes in these 8,000 or 9,000 applicants interviewing in different panels and different deaneries of the UK. Then interview results come out, your rank gets released approximately in March. And based on that, you start doing your preferences, which is, I would say, preferencing is, I found it a really interesting process. So you basically get this period of time where you choose from all the 1,600 IMT seats that are spread across the whole of UK. But then you get a say, you choose the location that you want to train in and filter out the rest. That probably took a lot of time, a lot of research, a lot of asking around about each deanery. But then I think it's quite a good thing, as it gives you control over, for almost the next 3 years, where do you want to spend your life. I've been working in London for almost 3 years now, and I chose to wait it out until either I get a training spot in London or something within the proximity of it. And then, so after the preferencing is done, finally, the offer starts coming in April, and then the offer pool can stretch from April even until June or July end, and then you basically join training.
So it's a long time.
6-month process, and I still know people who are waiting for offers. Their ranks offer in the first cycle, and as the new seats get released, they sort of go forward. So I think it still can go until like July and in September. It's quite a long and tedious process.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much for that insight. Now, the next question that most of the doctors want to know, especially we get this question from the junior doctors, importance of portfolio building. Let's say, what are the key things to focus on if, I mean, doctor, whoever is, whether doctors are starting the journey now, or we have many doctors who've started the journey in the UK, but they're still somehow confused. How do I get into the training post? So, what advice do you have for them in terms of adding for the portfolio?
I absolutely agree that portfolio building is probably the main aspect that you start working on alongside trying to adapt to this whole new system that is the NHS. I certainly had my own struggles trying to figure out which aspects of my CV that I'm lacking in. But the good thing about working as a resident doctor in the NHS, be it IMG, be it a UK graduate, is that you have that support system that's focused on making sure that you progress academically as well. So, it just starts with small steps like doing an audit or quality improvement project in the ward, which is personally, that's the first thing I did. And then you can definitely create something solid out of that. My experience working in Kings, so, I had plenty opportunities, to not just attend teaching sessions, but to organize them as well for medical students who were affiliated to Kings. So, all of this, you get a chance to plan, you get a chance to collaborate with other professionals and get guidance as well from the supervisors. So the overall system promotes career progression, but I would say the key thing to focus on, and my advice to people would be, in order to enhance your portfolio, is not just ticking boxes, but it's also showing genuine engagement and enthusiasm to every opportunity that comes your way.
So if I have to just summarize, doctor, for doctors, one will be, as you mentioned, QIP and audit. The second would be research
Yep.
and publication. And of course, you mentioned about teaching. Any other things that they need to focus on?
I think there are, because if I match with the IMT scoring portfolio, your QIP, there used to be leadership. They have since then taken that out. I think the only thing that's left actually is presentation. So be it a oral presentation or poster presentation, and that's often connected to you doing a QIP, because either research or QIP, you can make an abstract out of it and present. And if you really want to step aside from the pool, then doing a master's or some sort of graduation certificate, like I did a PG certification in medical education, just to make sure that I'm really at par with my scoring.
Very nice. And actually, I forgot to mention to audience, Dr. Zeeshan has also passed his MRCP Part 1 and Part 2. With all of it, the work, the portfolio building, plus passing exams, I think that's what he just mentioned now. Just to focus. And if you want to stand out from the rest of the crowd, I think all these things will play a very, very big role. You've completed your MRCP Part 1 and Part 2. Did that play a role in your IMT selection, or wasn't that considered at all?
Absolutely. I think that's one, I definitely remember that you had always given me this advice that right after your PLAB to get started and, start thinking about MRCPs. I think one major advice that I always give in my mentorship sessions, which I've learned from my mistake, is that get started planning ahead and writing your MRCPs as soon as possible, which, it kills a lot of birds, with one stone, which is, if you're an IMG stuck with not getting a job, I think having part 1 and part 2 ready in your portfolio makes such a huge difference to, this panel who's interviewing you for a non-training job. And same thing applies for IMT training. If you're a junior clinical fellow or a non-training who is sat down in front of them and that you've already passed your part 1 and part 2, that shows your commitment to specialty, and that is a major chunk of the scoring system of IMT, that he is committed to IMT and he's already started preparing for it. So my advice would be, get your MRCP exams out of the way as soon as possible.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you for it. And I think I just wanted to know, did it take many attempts for you to crack IMT, or was this your first attempt?
So this was not my first attempt, but after joining in mid 2023, I still applied to IMT training that year. when the
Mhm.
application opened in about November 2023, just to see how I get along, just for the experience. I did not even make that shortlist cut, but I can say every failure is a lesson, and that was such a huge lesson for me. Through that try, I knew exactly where I'm lacking in my portfolio. And I remember sitting down, making a table to see, what my goal is in terms of, portfolio scoring and what I need to do for it. So I worked on it, made the cut this time, gave my first IMT interview, and here I am, delayed but not denied.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for that honest response. So I guess now, many doctors do ask us this, which I'm going to put it forward to you. How was your IMT experience? And where many doctors ask, what is the difference from IMT interview and non-training interview? Because for non-training interview also there's a panel based on specialty, they get questions. Is IMT also the same or is it something else? Can you just give us some insights on it?
So I think IMT interview, it's quite a daunting interview, because essentially you have to realize you have 20 minutes to prove to this panel full of consultants who are strangers to you why they should select you for IMT. That means all that you've done so far, all your achievements, all your experiences, your skills, somehow you have to squeeze into this 2-minute presentation, which was definitely not an easy task. And then after that, the waiting, there's so much waiting, waiting for shortlisting, waiting for interviews, waiting for results, and then waiting for the rank. It's definitely exhausting. To be honest, the fact that I'd given plenty of non-training job interviews recently helped a lot, because the structure and the questions are along the same line, except the only difference is the pressure. I think the pressure is unmatched. You can fail a non-training job interview and then reapply to another one, but
Mhm.
for IMT interviews, you get one chance in an interview in that 20 minutes, and if you don't get it, then it's basically waiting for another year before you can apply. So you can see the stakes are quite high. So I would say that's the major difference in IMT and non-training.
Thank you, doctor. So, doctor, if I have to summarize, IMT interview is only for 20 minutes, is it?
Yes. So you have two stations. The first station is about 11 minutes. Out of those 11 minutes, you get a chance of preparing a 2-minute presentation and talking about yourself, followed by sort of they ask you questions. And this is the most important bit, because they've read through your scoring already. They ask you questions about your scoring or your portfolio that you've submitted, followed by an ethical case scenario that they give you and test you on. And then you go on to a second station, which has two different consultants who do a clinical station with you for about 10 minutes. So approximately 20 minutes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the insight, doctor. Now, the next question that we have is I think there's something that youngsters are more interested to know. How's the work life balance in the UK? Because we speak so much in India, there is no work life balance because doctors work here back to back shifts and the workload is excess in India. So, how's the situation there? Do doctors really get 2 days off completely? So, in a week, they only work for 5 days, or how does it work, doctor?
So I think work life balance is something that's used personally. I'm guilty of using it so much, talking about coming to UK. But eventually you realize that it's quite subjective and varies definitely from trust to trust, and within the trust, department to department, and how your rota is. Personally, for me, in my job at King's, has been nothing but rewarding, although the rota can vary. And because I've over the past 2.5 years, I've rotated in pretty much most of the departments in King's. Some departments can be busier than others. Your rota can seem busier compared to what you were working in. But I would say the overall idea is that you still get time off, plan your vacations, take annual leaves when you want them, plan your study leaves, take some time off to travel as well. And yes, to your question, you do get 2 days off. So your usual working days are 5 days a week, except your rota commitment also involves that you work one in every 4 weekends. So basically, once a month, you will be working a weekend.
Okay. So it's a choice. If a doctor wants to do overtime, it's doctor's choice. There is no compulsion to do overtime.
No, absolutely. And that's where the work-life balance comes in. Because if you want more of a balance, you choose not to do, like me, you choose not to do locums. But there's plenty of locuming options for you to pick up extra shifts, make that extra money as well, if you want to.
Thank you, doctor. Doctor, let's say when you first started working in the UK, How did the healthcare system feel from a junior doctor's point of view? And was there anything that really surprised you? Because you've done your internship in India, though you did your MBBS from Philippines, and you've seen how things work over here. So was there something that was very surprising in terms of your day-to-day work life?
There were a lot of things that were surprising. I was pretty much a blank canvas when I came to the UK. I did not have much clinical experience, prior to starting here. And that's why everything felt new. But I know colleagues who have had or who have worked 2 to 3 years back home, but it's still the same story. So I can definitely say I felt more heard as a resident doctor and was definitely encouraged to voice my opinion or concerns if I had any. And I think also, given the diverse nature of the NHS, I think you need to understand that nowadays it's not just the IMGs who are expected to adapt to this, to working in the NHS, but over the years I've seen how the departments have now incorporated these norms to help support newly joined IMGs, be it making sure they have regular meetings with their supervisor to make sure they're fitting in well, or even extending their shadow periods until they're confident that now I'm ready to do ward rounds. So because they understand it's a whole new ballpark, giving us time to understand the roles of each and every member in the team, knowing how the whole system operates. So I think overall you're well supported and you're not asked to take on tasks that you're not comfortable doing.
Thank you, doctor. And I think because we just mentioned that you've done with your MRCP, and we know we advise even all our doctors, even after PLAB, who are waiting for jobs now, we tell them, yes, jobs are taking time, but do not sit back. Keep progressing. Start working on membership exams, is what we say. So, how did you prepare for MRCP? Like, did you use any specific resources, or do you have some tips for doctors who are working on MRCP now?
So I'll touch on that point again, that I think giving your MRCP as early as possible is quite key, even if you haven't got your first NHS job. But also you need to understand preparing for MRCP becomes a lot easier when you actually get into the system, because a lot of what you see, a lot of what you deal with, including guidelines, they show up in the exam. So for me, I mostly stuck to past medicine and past test sort of mock papers for my preparation, and they were more than sufficient. I think the key here is consistency, because giving time to preparation is not an easy task while managing a full-time job. But that's why getting started early while you still have time, helps so much. So that's one advice I wish I'd taken.
Thank you, doctor. And doctor, we hear that many UK doctors are now moving to Australia. Is that true? Because I'm sure you'll be seeing your colleagues. Can you just give us some insight on it?
Yeah, it is true that some UK doctors, not just IMGs, but I've seen a lot of local UK graduate colleagues of mine who are planning to move to Australia, and just speaking to them or speaking to the people who are planning to relocate. I think it's mainly for better pay, but also a lot of them for sunnier weather, because UK weather does take a toll on you eventually. So I think, in my personal opinion, it depends on personal priorities. And also, as IMGs, it's important to factor in how willing you are to go through the whole cycle again of moving to another country, adapting to another health system, and working there for a good amount of time before you get accepted into training there. So I think, take that as an advice that I give to all medical students now, is to start thinking ahead about their career choices. In theory, moving from one country to another seems manageable, but in reality there's a lot of time, a lot of energy that goes into it.
Thank you. My next question is the salary enough to live comfortably for junior doctors, especially in the early years?
I think you don't live a lavish lifestyle, but it is quite reasonable and manageable. Me staying in London, I think it's quite a considerate thing that we get what you call as London waiting. So you get an extra amount every year, considering that London is more expensive compared to other cities. You get enough that you get to save as well, and you get to travel as well. So it is quite a reasonable pay.
All right. Thank you, doctor. Now, I think we spoke a lot of good things. We spoke about your journey. We spoke about your MRCP preparation. Now, I'm sure who's watching this podcast today, they would also like to know, did you face any setbacks challenges or self doubt along the way? Because I know it's a long journey coming to India, doing FMG, because FMG itself is a very major task which many students kind of lose it to get things done in the first attempt. After doing that, such a tough exam, you finished it, did internship, started all your PLAB pathway, went to NHS. I know waiting period after PLAB till you could find that first job. Can you please tell us a bit of challenges that you faced and how did you deal with them?
I think that's a very good question, and I would just like to start with imposter syndrome. Is something that's so real, and I realized it when I came to UK. All my IMG friends have gone through the same. We've all had that time of self doubt, thinking, "Do I really deserve to be here?" And especially, in those initial months when you're new to the system, you're still trying to adapt to the work environment while also managing all these numerous things outside your work in this new country. So I think most of my mentorship sessions have largely been based around guiding others around how to deal with this. You would be surprised how many people are struggling with trying to adapt and having self doubt, and sometimes you just need someone to talk to. It's reasonable. You miss home, you miss home cooked food, you miss your friends, but there's always this sense of comfort in knowing that you're not the only one dealing with this. So how did I deal with this, and what's my advice is time is the answer. The first 4 or 5 months are going to go by in total chaos, but once you settle in, it becomes a lot easier. I think the most important thing to realize is that it's okay to feel low. What matters is getting up every day, showing up, and remembering why you started. That's the most important.
Good. Thank you, doctor. And doctor, is there any kind of bias or racial discrimination against IMGs?
Absolutely not. I think over the years, NHS has become so diverse, and so multicultural that there is no room for bias or racism within the workplace, and it's been so heavily incorporated in everyone's minds that even a little bit of it, if you see any, gets highlighted and raised very quickly and gets dealt with.
That's nice. Thank you, doctor. So now, doctor, very quickly before we wind up the session, because you've been through all of it, so your advice for PLAB pass doctors who are waiting for their NHS job. We see many doctors who pass PLAB exams but are currently waiting for the first NHS job to happen. Second is doctors who are already in the NHS. They're 1 year, 2 years down the line, but they're unable to get into training spot. They're unable to get into training jobs. The career progression isn't happening. And the third would be for medical students planning to start the UK pathway. So now let's say first, if I have to ask you, what would be your piece of advice for doctors who pass PLAB and who are waiting for their first NHS break? Because I know how much ever we tell from this side, keep progressing, keep working on MRCP, keep working on MRCS, keep working on MRCOG. But we know how it is to deal with it, understanding it's NEET PG time, their fellows, their peers, they've got into specialty seats. At home, there is pressure. Outside, there is pressure. How much ever we tell them, no, keep progressing on career, they're still upset. They're still frustrated. Why am I not getting a job? For how long should I wait? So, is there any tip for them?
Absolutely. So I think I think the general advice that I would give is, plan your goals and, stick to it. No matter how tough it seems, which definitely applies to getting jobs in the UK these days. One thing you need to understand is it's not impossible. I still know people who are, NHS is still hiring, people are still getting jobs. The only thing that's going to differentiate you from the pool of other people is being consistent and being resilient. So to PLAB pass doctors waiting for their first NHS job, I think my one advice would be use this time to build your portfolio and consistently apply for jobs, because you need to understand, if you do not apply, then your chances are zero. And with every application you apply, it increases your chances of getting that one offer in your email. All you need is one, and that's pretty much it. And then do not forget, well done, you are right where you wanted to be when you started. So appreciating as well is very important.
Thank you, doctor. And we also come across many of our doctors who feel that they're kind of stuck in the UK because they're not able to progress to training jobs and they feel "Arey, there is no progression happening." Is there any tip for them?
So for people, in the NHS currently, already in the NHS, I was there as well at one point when I wanted to switch jobs, within something that I wasn't happy with. You need to work in the best interest for yourself. So you need to consider why you think you're stuck and consider switching roles that work to your best interest. And then again, writing the Royal College exams while you're here, they will help you strengthen your application, not just for a job, a non-training job, but also for your training application. Trying to, and it is definitely, in my experience, it's definitely easier finding a job because you have that connection. You have the means to now approach people to find a new job. So I think it really helps being in the NHS. So those would be my two advice. And then again, well done. You're right where you wanted to be when you started.
Thank you, doctor. What is your advice for medical students at this point of time? Rather, you tell them no, sit, focus, do your NEET PG, and then come to UK, or you feel no, this is the right time they can try for UK?
That's again a very tricky question. I think I would say 2 to 3 years back, advice definitely was that it's not as tough. PLAB 1 and PLAB 2, you can pass and easily get a job. Initially, it used to be a job within 4 to 5 months, then on to like 6 to 8 months. Back when I was trying, which was true. I think there are jobs, but it is quite competitive because you have many giving PLAB 2, but there is a bottleneck in terms of how many jobs are out there. So I would advise that for medical students, it's definitely very important to plan ahead. Start planning your short term goals and then start planning your long term goals. And if you can, honestly, I think a better option now is to get into residency in India, do your NEET PG there, give your Royal College exams while being in India, because right now you have a better chance of getting a job after passing your Royal College exams and joining as a higher specialty rather than as a junior clinical fellow. But if you are ready to go down that path, you have to understand that it will need consistency. It will need every day sitting down and applying consistently until you get that one job offer. So it all depends on you.
Thank you, doctor. If you wish to talk to him about the opportunities in the UK or about your IMT portfolio or about your PLAB preparation, whatever it could be, if you wish to speak to Dr. Zeeshan, please log into www.gocampusworld.com and book a session with Dr. Zeeshan. So it was indeed a great session today. Thank you so much. It was a very honest conversation, and we understand it's a very busy time. Thank you so much for taking time to join this podcast today. And I'm sure it's inspiring to all the doctors who want to watch this journey of yours.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really lovely sharing my experiences here.
Thank you, doctor.